Hi, I'm going to go through how to create new quizzes inside of Canvas. So, first and foremost, one of the first things I ever do whenever I'm learning a new piece of Canvas is I always take a look at the Canvas guides. So, one of the first things you can do is go to Canvas Community and take a look at those resources. So, I'm actually going to make this not full screen. I'm going to show you how I got here. So, I literally just went to Canvas Community and I clicked on the knowledge base. So that's going to be here. And then it's going to take me to Canvas. So I'm going to click on Canvas there. And then the next step from here inside of the guides in order to get there is to click on the instructor guides, because we're looking at how the builder, like how the teacher would build inside of Canvas. And Canvas calls that an instructor. And then I scrolled down till I clicked on new quizzes. And that's how I got to this. And these are all hyperlinked to very simple step by step, including screenshots, guides on how to do each of these things. So, for example, if I want to start with how do I create an assessment using new quizzes, I can click here and I can see the step by step approach of how to do that. And they try to break this down into one skill at a time, and they use lots of screenshots that walk you through each and every piece of how and what to do. And what's nice is oftentimes, as you are going through this guide up here at the top right, it'll tell you the related guides. So 9 times out of 10, it might take you to one guide that you need, and then you can click on the next one that might also be relevant to what you're trying to accomplish inside of Canvas. So that's something to be aware of. Okay, so that's the first thing I want any user who's learning Canvas, any piece of it, to know, but specifically how to use it for new quizzes. The other thing is there's actually a Canvas community called Welcome to New Quizzes. If you go to product, roadmap, and beta user groups and new quizzes, or just Google new quizzes group in Canvas community, you'll get here. This is one of the places that you will find some great resources, such as how does new quizzes work in this way? Or, hey, is this a weird thing that they're still working on? It also is where they're communicating the feature timeline. And one thing we really want to draw your attention to is understanding that currently Canvas is on set to depreciate classic quizzes as early as February of 2021. Now, what does depreciate mean? We don't exactly know, but we do know as of July of 2021, they're going to prevent classic quizzes from being created, and they're going to prevent students from submitting and attempting a classic quiz. Now, it looks like they have recently made a little bit of a pushback. They were originally going to do some of this as early as December of 2020, and now some of that's been postponed until July of 2021. But it is something to be aware of. This is coming faster rather than later. So it's one of those things to start teaching our teachers to move towards new quizzes and start kind of walking away from classic quizzes, because pretty soon Canvas is going to only support new quizzes. So that's something to be aware of. They have another way that they also communicate this timeline out as well. And this gets updated. Obviously, all of this could change, but it's something to be aware of what's coming and when. So from there, let's go ahead and talk about how do we create one. So I'm just going to go to a random Canvas course and I'm going to click on quizzes. And over on the right, I'm going to click on the plus quiz button. Right now, in most courses, this dialog is going to pop up. This dialog will eventually go away once new quizzes fully takes over. But at the moment, you'll see that it's asking me, do I want to use classic quizzes or do I want to use new quizzes? So in this case, I want to use new quizzes. I can even tell it to, in the future for this course, remember this. I'm not going to, because I use this course specifically for demos. And so I don't want to check that. But you may want to teach your teachers to do this so that going forward, anytime they create a quiz, they don't even have to deal with this dialogue. It'll automatically make a new quiz. And it has some description and some information for you here as well, which is kind of useful to check out. All right, so we're going to create a new quiz. One thing you'll notice is the first page you're taken to is a page that looks familiar. It looks like old classic quizzes did. And so one of the first pages is kind of this like Canvas build page, if you will. So I'm going to call this example quiz. And I'm going to say it's going to be worth 3 points because I'm going to make 3 questions. If I've already set up my assignment groups for formal and informal for grade pass back, I would select that here. I can choose how I want to display the grade and all that jazz. One thing you'll notice is that the submission type is grayed out. That's because New Quizzes is technically an external tool that they've built separate from Canvas to work inside of Canvas. And there's some justification for why. What you really just need to know is that sometimes some things are going to be a little bit strange about New Quizzes, and part of those reasons might be because it's technically an external tool. So it's just something to kind of have in the back of your head. It may or may not be relevant to you. All right. The next thing you can do is you can choose to sync it to PowerSchool. You can assign it to people and sections. So if I had sections in here, like first block or second block or whatever, I can choose the section. I can assign it to specific people in my course here as well. And I can also give it a due date and an available from and an until. All right. So far, everything looks similar. The one thing you'll notice is up here at the top where there usually is a question tab, there isn't. It's just not there. And so, what you have to do to actually go to the next step of creating a new quiz is click save. Okay. When you click save, this is when the magic starts to happen. So, the next thing you'll notice is now you have this whole new platform looking thing that is New Quizzes. And so, it looks much more modernized and it definitely has a more modern internet feel to it. So this is your building platform for New Quizzes. So a few things to draw your attention to. Up here at the top, you have some of your menus that might be important. Over here on the left, you'll see as we create questions, those will be populated here. And I can pop this menu out and kind of take a look at some of that. I can add my title and my instructions over here. It'll kind of keep a running total of the number of points for me. Up here at the top, I have my item banks. So these are going to be different than my question banks, which were from classic quizzes. I have outcomes, and eventually, once I have some questions in here, I have the preview button. Up here in the top right, I also have import content and also my manage item banks options. I also have return. Return will kind of save it and take me back to my quizzes page right now. So quickly before we start building an individual question, I like to go to settings and stuff like that first because I kind of like to establish all those things first before I start building my quiz. That's just a personal preference. You may build your questions first, whatever works for you. So build is where you're adding questions. Up here at settings is where I can choose some settings, and you'll notice some settings that are a little bit different than classic quizzes. Some are very similar though. So we now have shuffle questions and shuffle answers. This is actually really exciting. In classic quizzes, the only way to shuffle questions was to create these question groups, which were different than question banks, and that was a little bit confusing. That no longer is a thing. You just have to click shuffle questions. You can also shuffle your answers. Be careful if you shuffle answers, because if you have something like all of the above, you need to be aware of the fact that all of the above would be shuffled as well. You can also choose to make it show the student one question at a time or let them go through and see all of them in one go. You can require an access code just like we would in the past. And so that's something similar. You can create a time limit or not. And then you can also do things like, I'm going to move myself, filter the IP addresses is not something I would suggest. Do not click that. You do not know what that is. Leave it alone. But you can allow a calculator. You can allow more than one attempt. And you can also restrict the student view. Restricting the student view is one I want to talk about the most because this is one that a lot of people do not read carefully. All right, if I click this button, restriction of student view will occur, period. Okay, so then I've got to decide at what level do I want that to occur. Okay, so right now, if I've clicked this, it is going to make it to where students can't see anything. Now, I can choose to now show them stuff. So I can say, you know what? Yes, I still wanted to show them the points awarded. Okay, I still want them to show the points that were possible. I still want them to show the items and the questions, and you can show the student response. You can indicate the correct answer. You can show the correct answer with the incorrect answer, and you can show item feedback. Or I can choose not to do any of those things, right? Like I can go through and uncheck what I do not want. For example, I want them to see their own answer, but I do not want them to see the correct answer. Okay. So this is something that you want to pay attention to. I may not want them to see anything. If that's the case, I make sure all of this is unchecked. And literally, it'll just say to the student, you've submitted, and that's it. And your teacher is choosing to not show you anything. So that's something to be aware of. Up, under, unlimited, or multiple attempts, you can choose to keep the highest, the average, or the latest as well, by the way. And you can choose to do limited and give them like 3 attempts as well instead, okay? So these are some of the settings. Under reports, once somebody has taken this is where those item analyses and stuff will be. Those existed for classic quizzes. This is where they are for new quizzes. We can't see anything until we have a quiz and we have somebody who has taken the quiz. The last one is moderate. I don't have any students in this class, so it's harder to see. But one thing to be aware of is this will show each student listed and if they have taken the quiz, how long it took them. And there's going to be a little pencil. If I click on the pencil, I can give them another attempt or I can give them more time. So this is a great page to know for accommodations. So moderate is one that is a really cool one. And if you need to see more about what moderate looks like, don't forget to look at the Canvas communities for that. And we will be able to see that. Because you'll be able to see the how do I moderate a quiz. I think it was under this one. So if I go back here, I can go back to where it says all my guides. And one of them is how do I moderate a new quiz? And so I do want to take a quick second to show you that. So, how do I use the moderation page in new quizzes? So, if I go to this page, it's hard for me to demo because I don't have students in that class and I don't want to show you student data via a screencast, obviously. So if I go down here, it says, how do I moderate? So again, I'm on that moderate tab. This is what it would look like. It would have every student listed. It would show you their attempts, what their score is, how much time it took them. You can click on the log to see if they've left the screen or not. But then this pencil here is super awesome because you can click on this pencil and you can add time, you can add attempts, all of that. And it shows you how to go about that and what that process looks like. So this is something to be aware of. It even talks to you about how the log works and all of that. So very detailed, very, very detailed. All right, so that's all the tabs at the top. Let's go back to build and let's just build a question or two. So my title's up here. I can include directions like what I want my students to do. So read each question carefully and answer it. Okay, so whatever instructions I might want to have. I can also up here include things like media and other things from the rich content editor or the toolbar. You can do all kinds of stuff from up here. One thing that is of note about new quizzes is currently read and write does not read quizzes aloud in new quizzes like it did for classic quizzes. So one thing you could consider if you do not shuffle your questions is actually doing a read aloud up here and reading aloud all of the text and inserting that as media up here in this box and then clicking done. And then the students, as they take it, could choose to listen to that media to listen to the question. So that's one thing to keep in mind. All right. So I've put my instructions up here and I am ready to build. The best way to build is to click on the plus button so I can add content. When I do, I see all these options. So the one thing you'll notice is the item bank, the little piggy, like a piggy bank. Those are all your item banks are. Item banks are a really cool thing. And for the purposes of not making this screencast like 4 hours long, I will suffice it to say that if you really are working with more than just yourself, you're working with a PLC, you really need to go take a look at the item bank guides and play with this because you can actually create all your questions in item banks and share them between you and other teachers and y'all can all use them. And if somebody needs to make an edit, like a question was wrong, like the answer choice was wrong, it will actually take that question and change it for not just you, but all of the people that are sharing that question and all of the places where that question is shown up. So that is something to be aware of. And so item banks are honestly my biggest suggestion. I'm going to focus just on how to create a couple of types of questions in this screencast. But I would really encourage anybody who's really going to build extensively inside of new quizzes, check out how to do item banks. And again, how do I check out my item banks? And how do I learn how to do all that? I go to the Canvas guides. And inside the Canvas guides, you will see that there is extensive documentation on how to use item banks. And so, in fact, how do I share an item bank? How do I move it from one to another? How do I edit an item in the item bank? All of that is here. How do I create an item bank? All of those questions that you have are here. So just be aware of the fact that I would really encourage if you're going to build more than just a one off quiz and you're going to be sharing this quiz with other people, item banks are the way to go. New quizzes is definitely setting that up to be better than even question banks tried to be in classic quizzes. And they are called different things. Question banks are for classic quizzes. Item banks are for new quizzes. The vocabulary there is different, and that's something to be wary of. But it'll show you how to do that. And I do think that's super useful because you can share the item banks between teachers, which is just like eye openingly amazing. All right. So, anyway, we're not going to do that yet. Just keep that in mind. All right. So, all the question types. There are new question types inside of new quizzes that did not exist inside of classic quizzes. So, for example, I want to draw your attention to four different things here. One, I want to draw your attention to stimulus. Stimulus is something I want my students to engage, read, watch, write, whatever at the top or associated to a certain number of questions, but it's not a question itself. So, a great stimulus would be a quick video that I want my students to watch and then answer the questions associated with it. Or a stimulus might be a reading passage I want my students to read, and then these are the questions associated with that stimulus. Stimuluses are awesome. Okay. So that's one thing to keep in mind. That did not exist in classic quizzes. You had to do a crazy wonky workaround to make that work in classic quizzes. So this is like something people have been asking for. Another thing is categorization, ordering, and hotspot. These are three question types that did not exist in classic quizzes that are really going to take your questions to another level. So categorization is kind of cool. So we're going to start there because it's the first one. So the first thing is the question title. Hint, that is not what the question is. Like that's not where the question goes. So the add question stem is what the students will see. The question title is more for you for like figuring out what that looks like. All right, so we're gonna click here and we're gonna say put the following in their color category. I don't know. Like you could totally come up with some really cool ways to use this. All right. So I'm going to say these are things that are red and these are things that are blue. Under that, I'm going to add some answers. So apples, fire trucks. All right. I think that's going to be two words. All right. Blue, the sky. Okay. And then I don't know. CMS logo. There we go. All right. So these are all things that are when our students actually see it, I'm going to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to click save or done or whatever. And then what you're going to see is we can preview what this looks like. So the right answers are in the right categories here. But if I click on preview, categorization is really more interactive. So what it is it has these boxes and then it has all the answers down here. And then the students literally get to drag them to the right categories. So this just feels a little bit more modern technology, if you will. So that's kind of how a categorization question works. Pretty cool. I can see a lot of different applications of this. In fact, I have seen a lot of applications of this that are really cool with different content. I'm just trying to show you the concept of what it looks like. You'll notice one of the things I did as a designer here. I immediately tested this. I immediately went into preview and tested what that looked like to get a feel for what it looked like. So that preview button is your friend. You want to know what your students are seeing as you're creating this. Okay, so we've created a categorization question. Let's go ahead and do another one. Let's go ahead and do ordering. Ordering is putting things in order. And so I've seen this used really awesomely by a fashion merchandising teacher. Or I don't know for sure if that's the right course, but she had to teach about sewing machines. And she had a whole process that the students had to follow in order to thread the sewing machine. And it was very step by step oriented. And so I thought it was really cool because she created this question and the students had to put the steps in order of how to complete that process. That was a really cool application of this question. So this one is kind of cool because they'll get to drag and drop, same as before. You put it in order when you create the question, but then the students have to drag it in order so that it's in the right order. So I'm just going to say, like, put the numbers in order because I'm going to be lazy. But for demo purposes, put the numbers in order. And so, like, I might have something way more complicated here. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, just to kind of demonstrate the question type. But you on your end obviously would come up with something more advanced and use it with your content. And again, I'm going to go preview this because I want to see what this looks like as the builder, as I'm going, as the teacher. All right, so this is what it looks like as the student. Okay, obviously that's not in order. So I need to put it 1 and then 2 and then 3. So do you see how the students are going to be able to see this? So this is something kind of cool. And I can click exit preview as I'm ready. But that's kind of cool. The next one I want to show you is Hotspot. Hotspot is where you take an image and you define a region of space that is the correct answer. So, as a chemistry teacher, this was super cool because I was a former chemistry teacher. So, it was always like the periodic table, and it was like, click wherever metals are, or click wherever this group is. And so that's pretty awesome. But I can see so many other uses of this where you take a picture or screenshot of something, and the students just have to click where the right answer is. So, how you do this is you actually find your image. I suggest finding your image before writing your question. Just a pro tip there. And so I am going to look for. Do I have any good chemistry ones that are just easy to do? Oh, there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna pick this image, and it's just a image of a blank periodic table, right? Okay, so I might have the question of where are the halogens group, or click where the halogens are. Click inside of the halogens. Okay. And so what I would do is on here, I can choose a square, a circle, or a specific polygon weird shape. And I can choose where I'm going to do that. All right. So I'm going to say the halogens are group 17A or 7A. And so I'm going to highlight the region of space that's the correct answer. Okay. So my students can identify, right? Um, to identify them, identify their location. Okay. Something like this. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm going to click done. And now I'm going to show you what that looks like as a student. Okay. So I'm going to go up here to preview. And now, as a student, by the way, I want to show you, we enabled that calculator earlier. That's what that calculator looks like. It's kind of cool. All right, so this is what that question looks like. All right, so the student now has to click somewhere. Okay, so they can click anywhere on this image. If they click, it shows them where they clicked. Okay, that's not the right answer. So the student might know that the answer is anywhere inside of that region, right? If they click anywhere else, it's going to mark it wrong. So I'm going to click right there and click submit. And yes, it's going to tell me the other questions aren't answered. But that's how it's going to show me. Now, right now, results are not displayed because I chose not to display those answers. If they were, it would show me my answers because, again, it's letting me test that. So that's something to be aware of. Okay. So those are three of the new types of questions. I'll be honest, the rest of them are pretty similar to what you would see on classic quizzes. So, of course, you can do things like matching, multiple choice, true or false, numeric, multiple answers, fill in the blank, and essay, and all that. And the best way to learn about these question types is to go to the Canvas guides. And the Canvas guides walk you through every single type of question you can create inside of new quizzes, and it'll walk you through how to create each type of these questions. There's a few of them that are a little more advanced. So something like a formula question is a little bit more of an advanced question type, but super powerful in certain situations. So something to be aware of. This is a cool math type question. And you can define some variables and tell it how to calculate the answer, and it'll create all types of questions for you, which is pretty awesome. But there's a lot of really cool question types to take a look at. Now, one thing I'm going to quickly show you is how to add this question to an item bank, just so you know how to do it. So inside this question, I am already in here. I can click Add to Bank, and I can either choose an existing bank or do a new one. I'm going to do a new one called Demo, just so I have like I'm not adding to my banks that I actually use. All right, so I've added this to a bank. Now you will see it now says edit in a bank. So if I do this, I'm going to actually go to the item bank now. It pops up over here on the right as its own little pullout. And now any edits I make here, if this question is used in like three different classes or three different courses in Canvas, if I make those edits here, it'll edit in all of those places where it's being pulled to. So that can be a really useful way of not having to have that question be edited in each course because I selected the wrong answer, right? Or I need to make a modification to the question because I realized after the students took it, it wasn't a very clear question. In fact, I would reword this question probably, right? So that's something to be aware of. So that's how item banks work. They are kind of cool. The one thing is, if you click on your item banks, you can actually share them. So if you see this little sharing icon, so if I decide I want to share that with somebody, I can click on the plus button and I can start typing their ID number or their name in. So there's another account, ITPD support. So I can start typing that account and click that and then click add. And now that account will also have access to that item bank. Okay. So that's something really cool about new quizzes. All right. So those are some awesome ways of building. And the best way to learn this is to get in here into Canvas and just start building a couple of quizzes, do a couple of short ones, learn how it works, have your kids test it. It's going to be quirky. Not everything's going to work exactly the way you want, as with all new technology. But the more you work with it, the better you're going to learn it. One thing of note that I do want to show you is, okay, we're going to click return. One thing that always gets people with new quizzes is they create a new quiz and then they try to add it to a module. And one weird quirk about new quizzes, and I think it has to do with the fact that currently new quizzes and classic quizzes are coexisting in this world, is that if you go to the modules page and you try to add this as a piece to your module. So I don't even have a module in this course, so I'm going to have to create one real fast. You will find that it is not going to show up under quizzes. It is instead going to show up as a assignment. So if I click on plus, and I try to go to the quiz page, you will see all my old quizzes. You will not see the new quiz that I just created called example quiz. These are all classic quizzes because I'm going to show you how to migrate in a second. But if I go to assignments, we will see that example quiz that I was just working on. Okay. So that's something to be aware of. Sometimes if you can't find your new quiz, it's because it's an assignment, not a quiz. Okay. So that's one quirk about new quizzes that I would always want to tell somebody. The other thing is, how do I go from old to new? They've already come up with that process. And it's fairly easy. So, what I need to do to migrate a classic quiz to a new quiz, I'm going to click on quizzes and I'm going to look at the line for that quiz. And I have a bunch of them on here. You can tell by the rocket. Rockets that are not filled in are classic quizzes. Rockets that are filled in are new quizzes. They're green if they're published, regardless. Okay. All right. So this one's a classic quiz. So I'm going to start with this one here. So this is my Unit 1 quiz from an old chemistry course. If I click on the three dots, I have the option to migrate. So if I click the migrate button, it takes it a second. You actually see it now, which is pretty cool. So it tells me it's migrating Unit 1 quiz, and it does a pretty good job. There's a few question types out there. If you click through that new quizzes user group, it'll talk to you about what are some question types that have some quirks, but very few of them. All right, so if I click on this, first I'm going to click on the old version of it just so you can see what this quiz used to look like, because that's useful, right? But I didn't do anything other than that. Two clicks, three dots, migrate. All right, so this quiz used to look like this for my students, just so you're aware of what that looked like. And it was a very basic quiz. Like, I think this was all like multiple choice. Like, it was an easy one. It was pretty early in the semester. All right, so I have some fill in the blank. I have some questions that are all multiple choice looking. All right, so basic quiz. All right, so that's what it looked like as a classic quiz. What did it do to my new quiz, right? Like, in the migration process, how did it do? So if I click on it again, as the migrated form. Remember, the filled in rocket is what we're looking for. It's going to have the same exact title. All right, so now I have my filled in rocket. So this is my new version of this quiz. So if I click on it, all right, so if I click on it, I'm back here. So I'm back to my new quiz again. All right, and what I'll notice is, look, I have all my questions. What's cool is this quiz in classic quizzes had question groups. It made my question groups into item banks, and you can tell because of the little piggy. And so if I click on preview, this is what my migrated quiz looks like. I can see all the questions are there and they've all come over from that original quiz to that new classic quiz. So that's something to be. It is going to migrate those for us. We can migrate any old quiz to a new quiz. Part of the migration process is going to be just clicking those three dots and clicking the word migrate and giving it a little time. Shorter ones are going to be faster. So that's something to be aware of. Okay. Again, now that I know that put them all in question banks or item banks, I got to figure out how to get to those item banks. Okay. So that's something to be aware of. So I'd go to how do I edit an item bank? Um, and I would start looking at how I go through that process. So this is a good overview of just getting started with new quizzes inside of Canvas. So give it a try, start creating a few, see what you like, and learn how to use it. And if you get stuck or need to learn something additionally, take a look at those Canvas guides. They're really going to be the answer to all of these questions. Okay. All right. Well, good luck with new quizzes.